Hello and welcome to Levels Plus Whenever episode 165. We're going to be doing looking back today, 2010 through 2014. And I've got one pickup. I know I was quite adamant about all these pickups coming, but unfortunately one of them ended up getting canceled. So I only have one for this episode. So let's do that real quick and then we'll jump into looking back. This figure of Will from Metaphor Refantasio. I posed him to be sword surfing because that's one of my favorite things about him. Comes with quite a bit of goodies, extra faces, a sword without the foot stand, a hilt to just put into the scabbard. Alright, we are back with another looking back episode, and we're jumping into the 2010s with the first half. This was a difficult one, honestly. The Wii and the DS were wrapping up. The PlayStation 3 was wrapping up around this time frame. The 3DS and Wii U had a really rough start, which the Wii U never recovered from. There's some games towards the back half of a few of these that are only here because I played them, not because I actually spent a whole lot of time with them. The good news is that some of my favorite games ever did come out in this time frame. XCOM in particular stands out to me, and we'll be seeing more of it here shortly. Shovel Knight, Ghost Trick, Xenoblade Chronicles, Last Story, Dead Space 2, Portal 2, Dragon's Dogma just recently fell off my list. Ultimate vs. Capcom 3 recently fell off the list. Zelda Link Between Worlds is fantastic. Freedom Planet's on the list. So there's still a lot of good stuff, and there's been a lot of things that have been on my top 111 list, or 110 list as it currently is. Over the years, Never Alone has been on there, Tomb Raider's been on there, Deus Ex Human Revolution, Monster Tale, Arkham City, Rayman Origins and Legends, even Skyrim. Probably 2011 is the best year overall, I think, out of this, because when I look at my history of like games that I really loved, I think 2011 is the best year out of this set. But that's enough kind of background on things. Let's actually get into 2010, and we'll briefly talk about the top 3 and then a little tiny bits on a couple others, and then we'll move into the next year and so on as we do with these videos. Ghost Trick is the best game of 2010. It's the best game Capcom put out, I would argue, almost that first half of the decade easily, but in some ways, like, maybe even a little bit longer than that. Street Fighter, Resident Evil, Mega Man, like the big franchises really kind of backed off, at least in terms of my interest during this time frame. And Ghost Trick was truly one of the best DS games that really took advantage of not only the hardware, but was a demonstration of how cool you can make games look on that handheld. It is one of the best animated games I still think that I've ever seen. It's just got so much personality to it. It's also really compelling story-wise. It's got a great gameplay hook. I would argue that the remaster that came out recently is even better. It looks better. It gives the visuals a nice coat of HDness that enhances the already impressive animation and character designs. And I think it's a little easier to control, personally. So I cannot recommend Ghost Trick enough if you like puzzle games at all. This is one of the best ones that I've ever played. Hands down. Xenoblade Chronicles took a long time for me to actually get into. I got it on the Wii. I got into it probably about 20-25 hours, and then I just walked away from it. And I have a tendency to do that with RPGs sometimes, where I just spend a long time with it and then I walk away. and I sold it. I skipped the 3DS version. I never bought it on the Wii U when it was re-released there. But when they did the Definitive Edition, I picked it up again, decided I'm going to give it another go. And I'm glad I did, because I really like Definitive Edition. It feels a lot better. It irons out a lot of the little gameplay and menu wrinkles that I was probably having some issues with that made me walk away in the first place. And the new HD look goes great with the character designs and the environments. It runs pretty well, considering how big of a game it is. And it's fun. I really like it. I think that I really enjoyed Definitive Edition. And since I'm not really doing Definitive Editions or remasters on this list, that's why it's so high on 2010, even though I would give Definitive Edition the absolute nod in the end here for the best way to play that game. I wouldn't recommend going back to the Wii version. And to round out the top 3, Kirby's Epic Yarn. A very underrated game. I had fallen off of Kirby really hard after Superstar. I was disappointed in Dreamland 3, and then with Kirby 64. And then Kirby's Dream Land 2, I probably played after this, so I can't really evaluate that as part of it. But I just wasn't connecting with Kirby, because the power thing just got too convoluted for me. Kirby's Epic Yarn is almost a complete throwback to the original Game Boy game, where Kirby has no powers outside of acquiring yarn power-ups to get through certain levels, or certain chunks of a level. And that arts and crafts thing is really, really impressive and addictive to me in a way, because Euphoria 2 did the same thing, and I absolutely adore that game. I love that aesthetic, and I want to see more games do it. Unfortunately, they did not return to Kirby with this style. They went to Yoshi, and I don't really like the gameplay mechanics of the Yoshi series. So I've never played Woolly World or Crafted World because they don't interest me, because I don't care for Yoshi's play style. But I do think Kirby's Epic Yarn is fantastic, and it is something that I would love to see get a remaster on the Switch 2 at some point. To quickly round out 2010, I think Super Mario Galaxy 2 is in some ways better than Galaxy 1. It's a little bit more polished on the level design. It just abandons a lot of the story beats and narrative to really focus on levels, which if you are just there for levels, that's great. In a lot of ways, it's a better game than Galaxy 1, but I do think that there's just something about Galaxy 1 and the ambiance of the original game that I like just a tiny bit more. Tatsunoko vs. Capcom. Fantastic dream game. Shouldn't have been released in the US. I don't know how Capcom pulled together all those licenses to make it happen, but they did. We'll never probably see it again, just to be completely frank. Because all those licenses have further gotten muddied since 2010. But it is a really solid fighter that did set the foundation for Ultimate, or Marvel vs. Capcom 3 and Ultimate Marvel 3. And the Tatsunoko characters are very different than Marvel, very different than SNK or Tekken. It's a great crossover fighter that has its own vibe, and I really like that vibe. It's also got one of Capcom's more creative roster choices. They pulled in some interesting characters on that. The unfortunate thing is they also pulled in Frank West, who won't leave us alone in the Marvel series. 2011, and we've got Dead Space 2 at the top. My Last Story is currently 2 places behind it, so those 2 games mean a lot to me. And like I was saying earlier, 2011's the best year out of these 5, in my opinion. Dead Space 2 is a fantastic follow-up to the original Dead Space, and is the better of the original trilogy. Better than the first game. Way better than the third game. Third game is one of my biggest disappointments in all the video games. But Dead Space 2 is kind of like, if you look at Dead Space 1 and it is like RE2, Dead Space 2 is like RE4. It's more action-based than with spooks, but it definitely improves the overall experience, plus having Isaac have an actual personality and going through a whole bunch of stuff and reacting to it makes a lot of sense. It's got a great supporting cast, one of my favorite antagonists in all of games in Strauss. I just think it's really well done, and I'm really upset that EA decided to not remake that game, because Dead Space Remake didn't sell up to the bonkers numbers they wanted it to. EA's got this weird concept of Dead Space should be this multi-million selling franchise, because Resident Evil's done it a few times. That's very difficult for a horror-focused series to do, and EA has never learned that lesson. The Last Story, my personal favorite Mistwalker game, my personal favorite Sakaguchi game. This is the one that I actually beat and loved and enjoyed the hell out of. Not a Final Fantasy. It's The Last Story. I love the art style. I love the ambiance is so moody. The music, the art style, the characters, the storyline, it's just got such a mood to it. It's a game I was genuinely mad at until we get to a plot beat and bam, I just completely switched gears. Like, my entire philosophy of that game went from, man, I am so upset at this protagonist who's not doing what I tell him to do, to being absolutely in love with how they set the story up to give him a moment of actual realization that what he's been doing is wrong. And then just that shift is so good. I don't want to spoil it. I don't want to say what it is. I don't want to say what happens. All I'm going to say is that that was pivotal. One of my favorite turns in a video game narrative. It's not anything that extravagant or fancy. It's not mind-blowing in a conventional sense. But to have a character that I really wanted to go one way, and the character himself was kind of fighting against that until this particular moment when it's like our two wavelengths combined. One of my favorite things in a role-playing game. I will always love The Last Story. I want it to come back. Mistwalker's not interested in doing it. I would love a remaster. I really would. I know I say that every time I bring The Last Story up. But it's such a good game. It really is. Portal 2 had impossible shoes to fill because the original Portal was such a revolution in terms of gameplay. But despite that, it pushes what it originally brought to the table to so many new heights, and narrative-wise is even better, that I can't say that Portal 2 is the worst game. That just doesn't have the impact of the first. Despite having way more to do, there's even a huge co-op campaign that's a lot of fun. It is up there as my choice of Valve's best game, along with Portal 1. I just give Portal 1 the edge because that's the game I played first, and that's the game that blew me away with just an absolute marvelous gameplay hook and compelling antagonist. Alright, so that's the top 3. Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3 came out the same year as Marvel vs. Capcom 3. Should have been what the game was in the first place. It recently fell off my list because when I've tried to play it on the PS4, I'm not as hooked on it for whatever reason, despite the fact that it's an exceptionally good game. I think I preferred the 2D games more as I've gotten older. But it is still a wonderful, wonderful experience, and I highly recommend it if you like fighting games. Deus Ex Human Revolution had possible shoes to fill, much like Portal 2, to recapture the essence of that franchise, but with a completely different dev team and philosophy. And I think they did all right. The more that I think about Human Revolution in comparison to Deus Ex on PC, it does a lot of concessions to make the game work And I think that some of those concessions really hurt it in the grand scheme of things. I do think that the fact that there's literally no melee combat outside of cutscenes is interesting. The hacking minigame is too prevalent and everywhere to do just about anything of importance. And it's really not that exciting or engaging to play. And it does have some really bad racism in it. Really bad. So in the grand scheme of things, I really cooled on Human Revolution. 2012 introduced me to XCOM with Enemy Unknown. And I really love XCOM. Man. Fire Emblem and XCOM. Those are my two strategy RPGs that I really get into way too hard. I have played XCOM Enemy Unknown probably 3 times in full with my characters as the soldiers, and I love that. And then Enemy Within, I know I played at least 2 or 3 times. I played through XCOM 2 1 or 2 times, and then I played through More of the Chosen 1 or 2 times. And I'm thinking about replaying XCOM 2 again, because I just love what they did with this series. Yes, it's a meme that you can get a 95% shot and miss way more often than you think you should. It kind of sucks. Other than that, I have no complaints about any of the XCOM games. I think Enemy Within's better than Enemy Unknown. It adds a nice array of new options through going alien mode or going mech mode. And along with some new enemy types, new maps, and a few other nice additions. But in the grand scheme of things, I think XCOM is one of my favorite series of all time, at least the modern ones, because when we get to the next Looking Back episode, you're going to see XCOM 2 and War of the Chosen like at the top of those respective lists. It's really hard to top those for me outside of Fire Emblem and a couple others. Dragon's Dogma. Technically, I only played Dark Arisen. I didn't play Dragon's Dogma OG. But it's all there. It has a couple extra things going on with it. So I still feel comfortable putting it at the number 2 spot. It's really good. It reminds me a bit of the last story, where it took a while for me to get to a point where it clicked. It wasn't a story beat this time, though. It was a mechanic. So, trolls are really awful in the early goings of Dragon's Dogma, because they just are constantly stopping progress, because they just are tanks. And you have to kind of hit a plateau of leveling up to be able to deal with them appropriately. So, I finally felled my first troll, which was just a great feeling. Shortly after that, same playthrough, like that same day, I ran into a griffin, and I got the idea that I wanted to grab the griffin to try to keep it grounded. Well, instead, I didn't quite grab where I needed to grab to do that, so it flew off, and I was riding the griffin, holding onto it for dear life, up in the air, attacking it so it would come back to the ground. And I just remember that particular experience of being strong enough to actually deal with these enemies that have been scary. Truly just transformative moment in gameplay for me. I've never had an experience quite like that, and it's been not something I've had much since, honestly. I do want to pick up Dragon's Dogma 2. I'm just waiting to see if they're doing anything else with it before I pick it up, and I have a feeling they're not. Fire Emblem Awakening. After the drought of Fire Emblem, after Radiant Dawn, which I never picked up, and I feel bad now that I never picked that one up. Mainly because Path of Radiance didn't really hook me at the time. Shadow Dragon was a huge disappointment. We never got the new Mystery of the Emblem remake on the DS, which was just a huge step up in so many ways. And then we come to Awakening, the last hurrah of the franchise for Intelligent Systems. They basically decided to make it anniversary-esque game and have Marth be technically in it through Lucina. Tiki brought back, and just have it be this really interesting story of time travel and dealing with evil dragons. And they brought in fantastic voice work. Matt Mercer and Laura Bailey are the leads as Crom and Lucina, and they kill it in this game. The writing is overall solid outside of Basilio. They shouldn't have wrote some of the things they wrote for him. But a lot of the cast is great. It's very, very strong. And it was a great return to form for the series that would unfortunately lead to Fates, but did bring us to Three Houses eventually. So I can't hate too much, but Awakening is the best of the series, I think, up to a point. I still have a soft spot personally for the original Game Boy Advance North American release above it. And Echoes is a little bit higher for me at the moment than Awakening is. But I do think that in a lot of ways, Awakening is one of the defining games in the series, and a very important one. The Tomb Raider reboot, I really like 95% of it. It could have done without the torture porn death parts. It was trying to be too edgy in its violent content, and it was a little uncomfortable. Other than that, I think Tomb Raider Reboot is spectacular on every other level. I really like what they did with Lara. I never was interested in her character before. It made me interested in her character. And I think it's a really solid game. I really enjoyed it a lot. It was on my top 110 list for quite a while. I would like to replay it at some point. I still have it on the PS3. I would like to upgrade it to a PS4 version at some point. I just haven't picked it up yet. But now the franchise is owned by Embracer. So I don't really want to buy digitally. So if I ever see a used PS4 version of the trilogy, I'll probably pick that up. Because I wouldn't mind trying Shadow and Rise, although I've heard that they are definitely not as good as this one was. Sonic and All-Star Racing's Transformed. This is the best kart racing game that doesn't have Mario in the title for me. It's also one of my favorite racing games, period. It brought Vice of Skies of Arcadia back. It was wonderful. It's a great racing game, and Sega's never been able to match it since. They tried Sonic Team Racing, that didn't work. We'll have to see how Sonic Racing Crossroads, or whatever they're calling the new one, turns out. I hope it turns out closer to this. They definitely seem to be taking some inspiration from it. But the Sega love in this game is fan-freaking-tastic. It's really well done, and it's really good. It's a really good feeling game. It's really fun. Highly recommended if you've never played it. 2013 brought about the Wii U. And so there's some actual Wii U games on here outside of Mario Brothers U. And some of them are really good. Some of the best that they had. But we got to start with XCOM Enemy Within, which I kind of talked about already. Just it's a better Enemy Unknown with more stuff. I'll just leave it at that. It is better. And it is easily one of my favorite games in that genre. Zelda Link Between Worlds is a really good Zelda game. After being disappointed by Skyward Sword, I really was thrilled to see Nintendo taking some actual risks with this game and abandoning the dungeon weapon structure that had basically defined that series since Link to the Past. Because I would even going back to the original Zelda on the NES in some ways, because usually if you picked up the weapon there, you worked on the boss that was there, but it was locked in even more with Link to the Past. That was, you pick up the weapon in the dungeon, you use it on the boss. Didn't always work in the NES game, but it definitely got a little bit more hard-coded in the Super Nintendo one, and then in Link's Awakening, and especially Ocarina of Time. They broke that up with Link Between Worlds, which set the stage for Breath of the Wild to come in 2017 and really rethink how Zelda works. I think it's one of the best looking 3DS games. I think it's got just a lot of good things going for it, level design wise, great dungeon design, really creative mechanics. It's really good. If you haven't played it, it's definitely worth getting a 3DS for. I actually have the 3DS with the Link Between Worlds on it. The collector's edition for that specific release. And I love that thing. Super Mario 3D World is basically what I've wanted more from a Mario game since, honestly, Mario 64. I didn't hate the Galaxy games, but they weren't quite what I wanted. I didn't initially hate the new Super Mario Bros. Games, but they quite were what I wanted. Super Mario 3D World was a much closer take on the Mario formula that was more my style. And I also love the fact that Peach was playable. And it took way too long for her to be playable again in this series. Thankfully, that has not been as big of a problem in the recent gen that we're coming up on. But it was a big breath of fresh air to have Peach playable in a mainline Mario game again. It made me happy, and I tend to play as Peach or Rosalina when I play. It just feels good. It's got a great vibe to it. Wonderful soundtrack, one of my favorite Mario soundtracks. It's just a great game all the way around, and the Switch version's even better with an entirely new mode attached to it that I still haven't played. A whole lot of. SteamWorld Dig. This introduced me to the SteamWorld franchise, which is one of my favorite indie franchises in all of games. I have yet to really be bummed out by a SteamWorld game. I still need to play Build and Heist 2, but I love this franchise, and SteamWorld Dig was a fantastic introduction. Even if Dig 2 is the better game, this is still a very solid foundation for things to come with that series. Really good. Really worth trying out. And you can get it for pretty cheap these days. The only Assassin's Creed game that I've played, amazingly, considering how many of them there are, is Black Flag. And it's not because it's an Assassin's Creed game, it's because you got to be a pirate. I love that just vibe. And like Sid Meier's Pirates, I loved in a lot of ways. Skies of Arcadia is about being a pirate. So there's just something about that time period, that idea, that I really like. And Black Flag did a really good job of capturing being a pirate and adapting the Assassin's Creed formula into it. It's not a perfect game. Because it's an Assassin's Creed game of that vintage, it has the silly modern stuff in it that just breaks up the action, which is really annoying as someone who doesn't care. I just want to get back on my boat and shoot ships. And Ubisoft has never been able to replicate the joy of Black Flag. 2014, Shovel Knight. Shovel of Hope, as it is now referred to. What a great game. I actually was looking at my top 110 to kind of verify that rankings and all that were set up right. And I'm like, is this too low? Because this used to be like top 25, and now it's like top 50. I think I just need to spend time with it again and get reminded why I love this game so much. And it's got everything that I think the throwback retro aesthetic needs to succeed. Excellent pixel work, excellent soundtrack, great feeling gameplay, wonderful level design, and a good enough narrative hook to keep you going. It is a bit of a shame that it does rely on the old I gotta rescue my girl trope and doesn't really do anything with Shield Knight in the game proper. So it is truly just that. But at the very least, you could body swap and make every single character a woman, and then you can also make Shield Knight a man if you want, and just change things all around and just make it a completely different dynamic, which I think is kind of cool. I love the body swap mode. That was actually one of my favorite things that Yacht Club did for the original game, that I kind of wish they'd carried over into the others, but they wanted to move on with other things because they were on Shovel Knight for a very long time because of the Kickstarter. But it is a marvelous game that, honestly, with the treasure trove expansions of 3 full adventures plus the showdown option and all the stuff that they added to the original game, such a bargain if you are into 2D action platformers. It is such a bargain. Strider 2014, the best Strider game. And it wasn't even made by Capcom. It was made by Double Helix. So it is Double Helix's best game because they didn't make too many good ones. They did this and they took over. They started Killer Instinct 2013. So they were starting to finally congeal as a development studio making good games, and then were bought out by Amazon and totally destroyed. Yeehaw. I think Strider 2014 is a really good game, though. It feels great. It's a really solid Metroidvania. It does not reach the heights of a Metroid or a Castlevania in that style. But for Strider, I feel like it is easily the best playing, looking game in that franchise. Captures enough of the spectacle of the arcade game, has really good remixes and a solid enough soundtrack all on its own. I love the art style too. That's my favorite design of Strider as well. I like some of the designs of the antagonists too. It's just a really good game. And again, one of those highlights of Capcom's nadir period for me. Freedom Planet. I fell off of Sonic really hard after the Dreamcast. I didn't really have an interest in Sonic after Sonic Adventure 2, which didn't do a ton for me. I really wanted a 2D game. And here comes a really strong team that decided, you know, we have this Sonic fan game that we've been working on. How about we actually do something with it as its own property? And they created Freedom Planet. And it is an excellently designed game from start to finish. One of the best feeling speedy platformers I've ever played. I just really like it. I haven't played it in a long time. But I really like the fact that you have 3 different characters that you can play as. If you want a very wordy story mode, you can do that. Or you can play arcade mode and just completely cut that out. And just have a wonderful time. It's a really good game. Highly recommend it. And I still need to play 2. One of these days. Mario Kart 8. Deluxe is better, obviously. It is double the courses now. Has all the DLC from 8. And did even more to make it a better game. But the original was one of the Wii U highlights. And it is the best Mario Kart experience as of this recording, which was in May. We'll see how Mario Kart World does. But it is a really fun racing game. And it's probably my choices, one of my favorites, without question. Especially when you bring in the amount of sheer content that the booster pack added to Deluxe. It is astonishing how many courses are in that. And then the last game I'm going to talk a bit about is Shantae and the Pirate's Curse, which abandoned her power shifting transformations to be more of a Metroidvania style game with Risky's equipment. And I like that a lot. I think it's the best Shantae game. We will not see any other Shantae games probably make it onto this list unless I got desperate when Half Genie Hero came out. But it is charming to look at. It is fun to play. The gameplay is really good. Way Forward can't resist cheesecake, unfortunately, with Shantae. So there is a really unfortunate segment of the women in the franchise are all bumped or lumped together in this awkward beauty princess abduction thing. I really wish they did that, but they did. Worst part of that game, other than maybe the last area, which is awful. The one thing about Way Forward is boss fights are not their strong suit. That's my biggest issue with River City Girls too. And it's also a bit of an issue here. We are done with this set of games. Thank you so much for joining me on another Looking Back episode, and we'll do another one in about another month or two, and we'll wrap up the 2010s, which will be a very exciting time because we're going to be starting to get into the Switch, my favorite console of all time, some of Nintendo's finest work in the medium, as well as some incredibly good third-party games and indie games that I'm really excited to talk about. So, thank you for joining me, friends. Take care.